That in 2021, San Francisco issued only 2,000 permits for new homes. Sure, there are people living in the streets, but that's because we want to make sure the apartments they don't live in are perfect. I don't fear AI anymore because it couldn't possibly be any more robotic than the humans who run things now.
Much like Bill Maher, I've reached my limit with the overly woke left. In a recent episode of Real Time with Bill Maher, the sharp-tongued comedian took aim at the progressive fixation on red tape, the same tangled bureaucracy that's stalling America's environmental efforts. True to his signature style, Maher didn't simply criticize the left. He called them out for their extravagant spending that leads nowhere. His remarks cut deeper than comedy. They exposed a painful truth. The movement is losing ground because it's wasting energy on appearances rather than outcomes. And that loss? It's not just embarrassing, it's avoidable. Maher's blunt honesty struck a chord because it reflects a growing frustration shared by many who once stood proudly under the same banner. There's a lot to examine here, and it starts with understanding how good intentions keep collapsing under the weight of their own excess.
America isn't able to get anything done. It's that we're not allowed to. Of course, there should be consideration of the environment on everything we build, but as so often happens on the left, they seem to have no ability to recognize when they've taken a concept way too far and are in fact hurting their own cause. America's become Gulliver, the giant that got tied down with 1,000 tiny ropes by Lilliputians, the horde of little people who do big damage. Build back better? Sounds good. So does shovel-ready jobs. Yeah, exactly.
Maher argued that America's growth is being strangled by the left's obsession with endless forms and procedures. He emphasized that the Biden administration's so-called Build Back Better agenda had little to do with real progress or innovation. Instead, it became a tangled maze of committees, regulations, and towering stacks of paperwork. According to Maher, this wasn't a roadmap to achievement, it was a textbook example of how government inefficiency can smother ambition. Every action, he noted, demanded a mountain of approvals and piles of redundant documents. In the end, the system seemed designed to reward officials and contractors, not the everyday citizens it claimed to help.
As Barack Obama once said, one of the biggest lessons he learned as president was there is no such thing as shovel-ready projects. Environmental impact statements used to be a few pages long. Now they're thousands of pages of legalistic nonsense and take an average of 4.5 years to complete, with thousands of bureaucrats filling out millions of paper forms that kill hundreds of forests to answer the question, is this good for the environment? In San Francisco, the city's so nice you'll step in poop twice.
During his campaign, Obama placed great emphasis on shovel-ready projects, assuring voters that work would begin the moment he entered office. Yet that promise quickly fell apart. Before long, he admitted, somewhat awkwardly, that such projects didn't truly exist. Layers of environmental reviews and endless legislation buried the truth beneath a mountain of red tape. Maher highlighted how the modern left's fixation on environmental impact statements, EIS, has become a roadblock rather than a safeguard. Under the Biden administration, vital projects like the Keystone XL pipeline extension, initiatives that might have balanced growth with environmental care, have been stalled or derailed by this obsession. Ironically, the same government that claims to defend the planet ends up wasting countless pages of paper every year producing these exhaustive EIS reports. It's a perfect demonstration of how bureaucracy can sabotage the very ideals it pretends to uphold.
It's an area where homeless people were urinating and defecating, and it was starting to annoy the people breaking into cars. So the city tried to build a public toilet last year, but then gave up when the cost hit $1.7 million. Not $1.7 million for a public toilet system, $1.7 million for one toilet. And this wasn't some magic toilet that catches your phone when you drop it. So then a private company took pity on San Francisco and offered to build them their toilet for free. But after, quote, project management, construction management, architecture and engineering fees, permits, civic design review, surveys, contract preparation, and cost estimation, The free toilet was still going to cost almost $1 million.
And that's the real source of people's frustration. All of this unfolded under the Biden administration, which became so tangled in its own bureaucracy that even the simplest projects turned into exhausting, time-consuming disasters. This inefficiency became one of several reasons behind the Democratic National Committee's decline. Citizens grew angry watching their tax dollars vanish into administrative black holes. Take something as straightforward as building a public restroom. Under Biden's leadership, that modest task ballooned into $1 million ordeal. Between endless permits, environmental reviews, zoning meetings, and contractor markups, construction barely began before budgets exploded. This isn't just ordinary government inefficiency, it's a system that's lost all sense of practicality. What America needs are problem solvers, not paper shufflers. Instead, the public got an institution where talk was cheap, progress was pricey, and genuine development became almost impossible.
Feels like San Francisco is actually proud of being impossible. Asked about the toilet, a spokesman for the Department of Public Works said, "We are a city of public input." Okay, but I'm stepping in public output.
San Francisco's open defecation crisis has become a serious embarrassment for a city once celebrated for its generosity and progress. The same streets that used to symbolize culture and charm are now tainted by neglect and human waste. Despite the public's growing demand for real solutions, the local government remains tangled in its own web of procedures and regulations. Every attempt to build public restrooms collapses under the weight of environmental studies, funding disputes, and endless regulatory delays. While officials debate and paperwork piles up, everyday residents are left to walk sidewalks that reek of indifference. This situation perfectly captures the futility of overregulation, where good intentions are buried beneath flawed systems. People aren't asking for miracles. They just want clean, safe streets and a city that reflects their pride. Yet until San Francisco can cut through its own bureaucratic paralysis, even its most basic human need will remain unsolved and exposed.
Well, the median time to get approval to build a house there is 627 days. That's 217 days longer than it took to build the Empire State Building. You need 87 permits, 15 from the Planning Commission, 26 from the Public Utilities Commission and the Fire Department, 19 from building inspectors, 17 from the Public Works, 10 related to public spaces, and 1 from a guy in a t-shirt that says Federal Boob Inspector.
It's disheartening to see how real achievement seems to get harder the more advanced our society becomes. We're buried under layers of caution, paperwork, and political correctness, so much so that tasks our predecessors completed in a year now drag on for 2 or more. The irony is hard to miss. We call ourselves the smartest, fastest, most inventive generation, yet we move slower than ever. We've built artificial intelligence, nanochips smaller than grains of sand, and phones capable of tracking rockets in flight. Still, constructing a simple road or utility line feels like an impossible mission tangled in bureaucracy. The very systems meant to drive progress have turned into barriers against it. Though our tools have never been more powerful, our methods have never felt so fragile. For a generation that prides itself on intelligence and innovation, this kind of inefficiency is not only frustrating, it's baffling.
It's no wonder that in 2021, San Francisco issued only 2,000 permits for new homes. Sure, there are people living in the streets, but that's because we want to make sure the apartments they don't live in are perfect. I don't fear AI anymore because it couldn't possibly be any more robotic than the humans who run things now. So let me...
In San Francisco and California, homelessness is a serious issue. Nonetheless, you would assume that it would encourage lawmakers to speed up and streamline housing construction. Instead, the opposite is true. Due to permits, zoning laws, environmental evaluations, and public hearings, building a single house could take years. The system appears to be designed to keep individuals living on the streets, and therein lays the tragedy. These states are among the most progressive, affluent, and picturesque in all of America, with world-class cities and tech companies valued at billions of dollars. However, one of the most basic human wants cannot be met by them: shelter. Tents are frequently seen on sidewalks these days, a portrayal of failure hidden under good intentions. California might be the nation's model for creative, reasonably priced housing. Rather, It's establishing the norm for justifications and red tape. Consequently,
With this, not that there was ever any reason to build it in the first place, and not that there would be any reason to do it again, but just as an exercise in realizing how far we've regressed as the can-do people, I think we should all try to imagine how it will go down if we tried to sculpt Mount Rushmore out of a mountain today. First, we'd have to make the mountain handicap accessible, so we could hire handicapped people to work on the side of a mountain. Then there'd be a 10-year delay while we studied the effect of construction noise on the mating habits of woodchucks. Then another 10 years to obtain ethically sourced dynamite and find a sculptor who doesn't only work from home.
Bill makes a crucial point here. The number of permits and regulations required to build anything in this country can seem absurd at times. Papers have replaced progress. Our ancestors built enormous towns, railroads, and bridges that still stand today using far fewer resources and without endless permit chains. Of course, they weren't perfect, but at least they got the job done. Bureaucracy has become a barrier rather than a safety measure. It stifles creativity, kills initiative, and allows urgent problems to fester. Think about San Francisco's issue with open defecation. The city doesn't need another round of committee meetings. We must take action. Every day of delay would have a negative impact on public health and safety if leaders spent half as much time thinking through solutions as they do completing paperwork. The streets would be free of trash, the city's health would improve, and the people themselves would finally experience real growth.
And then another 2 years to apologize for being on Indian land. And finally, after 50 years and a cost that had ballooned to $100 billion, we'd have half a nostril, and it wouldn't be Lincoln, it'd be Che Guevara.
I know it seems funny, but it's true. All these tiers of bureaucracy appear to be in place to protect people and the environment, but in reality, they usually have the opposite effect. The effects are so subtle that they are barely noticeable, even when they are beneficial. It's the illusion of progress wrapped in red tape. Think about electric cars. They have been promoted as the answer to environmental preservation for a long time. However, despite extensive use, tax benefits, and subsidies for 20 years, the overall environmental impact has been relatively minimal. Why? Because most electricity still comes from fossil fuels, and because battery extraction has its own environmental impacts, the Earth barely recognizes our green endeavors as we applaud them. Real development is not facilitated by paperwork and performance evaluations. It is the outcome of earnest, fruitful action.
I feel like it wasn't that long ago when you could watch cable news for a day and not get the impression that this whole place was totally batshit. That simply was not America. Florida, yes, but not America. So let's examine what makes sane people feel this way. Sane people who are, after all, still the vast majority and who are the ones who, I assume, just voted me the most trusted man in America. That is a real headline.
You might not like Bill Maher. I don't even agree with what he says. Nevertheless, one thing is indisputable. He is trustworthy, honest, and doesn't hesitate to express his own views. That is rare these days. You can count on Ma to offer reasonable opinions and honest analysis, even if it offends members of his own political party. It was no accident then that he was one of America's most trusted men. After many years of speaking the truth without fear, that was the result. He has acquired his lessons the hard way by questioning dogma instead of interpreting it. Despite his leaning left, Maher is well known for his ability to evaluate subjects in a clear and amusing manner, exposing hypocrisy wherever it occurs. Whether you like him or not, you know exactly where he stands, therefore people pay attention to him. Bill Maher isn't just whining after all. His acts are a reflection of the frustration felt by millions of Americans. Efficiency has been replaced by bureaucracy, and red tape has emerged as the new national hobby. There is much evidence, including the San Francisco open defecation pandemic and the failure of shovel-ready developments. Too many rules, not enough results. Common reason, not politics, is the basis for the criticism of Maher's. We are in an era of unmatched technology and intelligence, but we can't build a house, a bathroom, or a road without being bogged down in red tape. It's hilarious, absurd, and terrible all at once. Regardless of your stance, Ma's thesis is obvious. Committees and licenses are no longer necessary in America. This calls for bravery, accountability, and the courage to take action, because bureaucracy will always be a hindrance to progress. We shall end today's video in light of this. Please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this one.